we were just talking during the break. I don't know why Nick Saban would open this up. I know that it was a home game in Birmingham with local businessmen, and you know, they're going to react to you. They're going to be on your side. And, you know, it felt like an oh, woe is me. How are we going to compete here? And he talked about he wanted parity. Well, this is a good way to get parity if you let people of these other schools and boosters pay money to these players. Now you're seeing tweets from former players talking about how players got paid, what they got paid. We're just opening the door here. I mean, they've been paid. It's just, how did you pay them? How did you get around the NCAA? When the NCAA actually used to be the NCAA. Now, this is a loophole that Texas A&M took advantage of. I don't know what you do to close it. That's why we bring in Pat Forde, covers the sport for Sports Illustrated. Let me play the Nick Saban clip, the first one here, Pat, and then I'll get your reaction to it.
We were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and like. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it.
What does he mean? What's the message he wants out there?
Well, I think two things. The operative phrase is there, we were second. Nick Saban doesn't like being second. He was beaten in recruiting. That's what this basically boils down to. I think it's more of that than a matter of principle here. He's a competitive guy and saw somebody take advantage of the new landscape to his own detriment. Now, what is the second part of the equation there, and he's a smart, calculating guy, might be a message to the Alabama boosters. Hey,
I know.
We got to step it up here. I mean, our NIL efforts are lacking compared to others. And I think Alabama has been a little more slow into that space, perhaps thinking we don't need to. We're Alabama. We're still going to get guys. But when you finish second in recruiting and you're Nick Saban, it takes on a greater sense of urgency.
Is Nick Saban saying that they have never paid a player to go to Alabama? Like, I want SEC Media Day to be lie detector test. Everybody sits down. Let's just talk about your recruiting. How do you think these coaches would do?
We SEC spring meetings start in, I think, 12 days. And one of the first items of business is a football coaches meeting. So I'd love to be in there to see Jimbo and Nick hash that one out. But, yeah, no, I mean, look, I think we all know the underground economy was humming along for decades. Players were getting paid. We just didn't know who and how much. Now we have a better idea of what the compensation levels are like above board. And yeah, if you had the best recruiting classes forever, it stands to reason that those players were getting paid. Now, Alabama obviously has the ultimate recruiting incentive, which is the best pipeline to the NFL, but that's not all. I mean, let's, I think, be realistic about where players were going and why they were making some school choices.
But also, if I'm a player coming out of college and Alabama recruits me, chances are I won't start right away. And I could go someplace else, get name, image, and likeness money. Let's say I go to Miami or Pittsburgh or A&M. Throw out any of these schools. I could go get paid, play for 2 years, put myself back on the market, and then maybe nobody has a better transfer portal results than Alabama does. I mean, they got 3 players, I think, this year that'll play in the NFL through transfer portal. So I could do that and then get paid when I get there if I'm believing what Nick Saban is saying. We don't entice you out of high school.
Sure. I mean, you could certainly play the system that way. There's no doubt about it, that you can get paid on the front end. And then if Alabama is going to continue to do things this way of, well, when you become a starter, you become a star, then you'll start to see the benefits. Yeah, you can get it both ways. You could get it somewhere else that's going to pay you to come in to sign a letter of intent and show up. And then you could transfer to Alabama if you're good enough and get paid there and then have that pipeline to the NFL. So sure, I mean, we're seeing players that are working the system. I'm impressed really by some of the ways players who now are having agents are exploiting what the system is now allowing them to get.
If you're Jimbo Fisher, what's your reaction today?
Well, it's interesting because he's already reacted a couple of times since people started taking shots at their number one recruiting class. And, one of the things was, have you been to our campus? Have you been to a game here? Have you seen the education and the 12th man and the Aggie Network? It's like, College Station is 90 minutes from anywhere, surrounded by tumbleweeds, bathed in everything's beige. I don't know whether you're getting guys from Philadelphia and Scottsdale, Arizona that are in this class based on those things. So it's just funny to me that coaches, even now that they're allowed to say, yes, we are offering incentives to these players, they can't bring themselves to say it. They're so accustomed to, no, they're coming here because we work hard and because we're going to develop them. It's just kind of funny. So we'll probably get another round of that from Jimbo here.
Yeah, if I'm a coach, I just go, yeah, we pay our players. We pay them really, really well. Come on in. We're open for business. Yes, Paulie.
A&M has called media availability with Coach Jimbo Fisher at 11 a.m. Eastern today.
Oh.
Just came in.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, here's Nick Saban calling out Deion Sanders and Jackson State.
There are rules, just like Nate said. We have a rule right now that says you cannot use name, image, and likeness to entice a player to come to your school. Hell, read about it in the paper. I mean, Jackson State paid a guy $1 million last year that was a really good Division I player to come to school. It was in the paper, and they bragged about it. Nobody did anything about it.
Okay. Why bring Deion into this? I thought they were buddies in the Affleck commercial.
Right, I know. The next photo or next commercial shoot's going to be a little tense, but that I don't know. That's interesting. I do think there's an element of Nick Saban, like, I'm 70 years old and I can say whatever the heck I want. I think there's something to that. Now the one he's short on substance here. He's short on facts and figures. Are we sure that he was paid $1 million? I don't know. These are fairly bold statements. I think that was surely assumed in a lot of areas, but Nick Saban went there with a degree of specificity that could have some blowback. As you said, Jimbo's going to talk here in, I guess, about a half hour, and Deion on Twitter has promised that he will address the lies by Coach Saban.
You lose the national championship to Georgia. You lose the recruiting class, to Texas A&M. I mean, it's not the end of the world for Alabama. Nick wants parity. He said that he's hoping for parity. He's the reason why we haven't had parity in college football. How is he going to provide parity for college football?
Yeah, no, obviously, yes. The biggest reason we don't have parity today is because Nick Saban has dominated the sport for 13 years now, and they'll be number one to start this year. They should win it again this year. I think now the parity comments now start to make a little more sense to me, in that I think he's thinking parity in terms of we're all offering things under the same guise, basically, of we can offer whatever we want, but not until you get to college. Parity, that sort of parity, I think, was as opposed to a recruiting parity where, hey, we're going to offer you $800,000 to sign right now, whereas this other school is not. I think that's what he wants, is more of an even application of what NIL is supposed to be. That's my guess, my interpretation of what he was saying there, because at the time it made no sense what he was talking about.
But also the enticement. We're talking to Pat Forde from Sports Illustrated. The enticement. I can entice you. I don't have to give you something up front, but you do know, wink, wink, if you go to Alabama, that we will take care of you. So it's semantics to me. Maybe it's not up front. Maybe it's not out, on a billboard. But when you get here, we're going to take care of you. I mean, these are grown-ups who are embarrassing themselves with the way they act and what they say and how they say it. It feels like, the players, the athletes are the grown-ups. They're like, all right, you guys created this. We're going to take advantage of it. We're going to outsmart you at your own game.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is a very thin line between what's being offered up front and what you will inevitably get. Bryce Young had a podcast before he had started a game at Alabama. And Nick Saban said last summer, before he had started a game, that he was getting about 7 figures. Yeah. So, it's not like you can't get paid at Alabama if you go there. So I agree that what this basically, I think, boils down to, nobody can get their arms around exactly what NIL should be, supposed to be, what we want it to be. And if there's just going to be a lot of infighting and arguing about it until we come up with a solution. And frankly, I don't know what the solution is. The NCAA can't enforce its own rules. So if you're sitting around waiting for them to create a level playing field, good luck.
Can you create your own rules in your own conference? Let's say the SEC says, we have our own rules here. Or the Pac-12 or the Big Ten. Like, can you just kind of secede from the NCAA and say, we're going to govern our own league, and this is what we're going to allow or not allow?
We're heading to that, no doubt. The NCAA Transformation Committee, which has been meeting for months, I think they have an August 1st deadline to produce their recommendations. And I think that's going to be one of the recommendations is basically conferences can almost kind of govern themselves. And part of that will be what are the rules? What's the rules compliance? Now, rules enforcement among conferences, well, they tried that before in the old days. Conferences tried to be their own rule enforcers. It didn't work. Nobody really wanted that in their best interests. The SEC does not want to have somebody turn in Alabama and say Alabama's cheating and then say, oh, we better go bust Alabama. They don't want that. I mean, so, I don't think it'll be very effective, but I think it'll get some of the onus off of an ineffective NCAA and start handing things out to the individual leagues to do what they want.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you, Pat. Great to talk to you.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
That's Pat Forde from Sports Illustrated.